Here's Shed. Off the window, no. Roberts tried to get it. Shed for the win. Got it. Jamal Shed plays the hero again.
Back to pass. Donovan Smith. Smith steps up in the pocket, unloads it, throws it all the way downfield into the end zone. Tipped, and it is caught. Caught by the Cougars. Caught for a touchdown. Unbelievable. Caught by Stephon Johnson.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holm Podcast. Back mercifully not for a second straight year to talk about a Bayou Bucket loss. Instead, our leading topic tonight is a dominant Houston Cougar win, the first win of the Willie Fritz era here as head coach. A satisfying win. Not that there would have been very many unsatisfying wins in this series given how it went last year, but very happy to have that leading the show. Not the only topic tonight as well. A lot of Cougar sports happenings. Bobby, you were out at another Cougar sport this past weekend as well, which will certainly be a topic tonight along with the forthcoming Cougar football game. Friend, how you holding up?
Good, man. Woke up a little scratchy throat, all that kind of stuff, but feeling a little bit better. Nothing that a little Dayquil can't knock out for you. So overall, feeling pretty good. Ready to talk some Cougar sports on this fine Wednesday. Kind of throws off the whole schedule when we're not able to link up on our normal day. But excited for us to talk some Cougar sports and for people to get this in their ears either later tonight or tomorrow.
And may I call it is 100% this host's fault that we did not have that happen. A combination of the work and personal prevented me from meeting at a reasonable time for my central time zone based co-host here. So
it's almost like we don't this isn't our full-time jobs and we have other jobs and responsibilities we got to do.
Crazy thought, but love to give a shout out here to the various things that allow us to do what we do here. None more important, I would say, than you, the patrons, at patreon.com/SH podcast. If you're not among those, and a number of you have joined since the start of the season, have been listening and appreciating what we've been doing in terms of the instant react episodes we've been putting on the premium feed for paying subscribers as well. If that is not you, but it sounds like something you would like to do, 16 cents a day. Little as that, you can support our show. More than $5 if you feel like being a little bit more generous, but little as $5 a month. Any amount that we get still goes an incredibly long way and is still very much appreciated by Bobby and myself. Of course, our sponsors, our good friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com on the World Wide Web. Bobby and I are both wearing Charlie Hustle shirts. Bobby's wearing the awesome white Fight Slam Pajama tee. I am wearing the Cougar
helmet tee.
The Cougar helmet tee. One of my favorites, I think the originals of Charlie Hustle's U of H collection, a collection that is thankfully, even though we love the original offerings, expanded to far beyond the initial offerings. Cougar tees, Cougar hoodies, Cougar crew necks, Cougar quarter zips for if you are a golfer like my co-host here. The quarter zip, very handy for that one. Just a great Cougar collection, great Big 12 collection. Incredible to see what they're doing over there. So if you want to support some people who support our show and make a great product, a great original Cougar product, go to our friends at charliehustle.com. And don't forget, I almost forgot. Don't be like me. Use our promo code POD15, PAWD15 for any Charlie Hustle order and save 50% on the order. And it's been a while since I've done it, and I feel bad for not doing so. Please also support our network friends at the 1012 Network at TEN12 Network on all social medias, talking all things Big 12 over there. Please also subscribe to the 1012 podcast wherever you put podcasts in your ears. Bobby, I think that is all the housekeeping. I'm trying to keep this tight because I think this is going to be a very meaty episode. Got to lead off here with what I led off with on the show, the dominant 33-7 win by your Houston Cougars over the Rice Owls. Don't think it needs a huge, long introduction. I think if you're listening to the show, chances are you have a decent idea of what happened to this one. Not one of the most explosive offensive performances in a victory over the Owls because, quite frankly, this program has set a very high standard. The 64-0 win, 1989, Andre Ware's last game before winning the Heisman that season. The 2009 game, I feel like Bobby's one that gets overlooked. I feel like that was one where I blinked and we were up like 49-0.
It was crazy
in the first half. Absolutely crazy. Not almost upstage 2 years later. by the Cougs dropping a 70 burger on the Owls after 70 burger, I think undersells it because they did almost all the offensing in like 2.5 quarters. Because I remember Rice got out to actually reasonably good early lead in that one. The Cougs just blew the doors off them in that one. So that's a high bar to clear. But in terms of sheer dominance, in terms of Rice never looking like they were going to win this one, Bobby, I feel like this one was hard to top. It was one of those games where it felt like U of H got that 2-score lead relatively quickly. And I think I had some nerves coming to this one because, God, you do not want to lose to Rice 2 times in a row. And just after, one very close, unsatisfying win in 2022, and then obviously a very dispiriting loss in 2023. You don't want to repeat of that. You don't want to come for a third time and talk about a Rice U of H game that was in some way unsatisfactory. But after U of H went up 2 scores, I don't know about you, Bobby, stopped being nervous. Like, I kind of was like, okay, like I'd like to get, a third score. Got that. When we went up 26. Yeah, I was saying when I believe it was 26-0. I was like, okay, like we're pretty much where we need to be. Like it was just dominance from start to finish. So I think we'll start as we usually do, something that you've got us doing. And I will say it, like I said to you yesterday here on the show, something I very much enjoy doing here. Cause I think it forces us to, and I think you, the listener, by listening to us, to think more deeply about the game itself. Bobby, what were your 3 overlooked impactful plays of this Bayou Bucket game?
Yeah, I think it was really hard. I think I told you this. It was really hard to find 3 plays that were kind of under the radar because, to your point, once we were up 14-0, it kind of felt like this game was well in hand, and you could tell Rice wasn't moving the ball very well. My 3 plays come from the first half. There wasn't much, where I was like, oh yeah, this game hinges on this play that happened. With 2:16 left in the first quarter, we had the almost interception where EJ Warner rolls out. He finds a receiver pretty open, right? Finds a guy pretty open, goes through his receiver's hands, hits the U of H guy right in the hands as well, falls down to the ground, incomplete pass. Why is that play so big? Well, that play was big because this was one of the first times where Rice actually looked like they had a little bit of offense going late in the first quarter. They kind of had a little bit of, I'm not saying that they picked up a first down, but you complete that pass, that was about 20 yards. It would have been about a 15, 20-yard completion. Clearly their longest play of the game up to that point. And who knows what happens after that, right? You just start going, and maybe that fires them up a little bit. Maybe that gets you thinking about your coverage a little bit differently, because he was pretty open. But also if that ball turns into an interception, right? That's a big play for the Cougars as well, and maybe they go full foot on throat at that point and really make this game not close, even though it ended up not being close. The next one was probably going to be when Rice fumbles on the punt. Cougars recover. The reason why I think this was kind of overlooked is because the next play was the touchdown. Cougars offense kind of stalled there, wasn't looking that great at that point in the game. That may have been a 3-and-out. I didn't write that down. It might have been a 3-and-out. Maybe we got 1 first down. Either way, the offense was just kind of stagnating at that point. You get that next play, big touchdown to put the Cougs up 14-0. Just a really big flip there on that one. And then the third one is actually going to be the roughing the passer call on Allen. Kind of a soft call, right? I definitely agree that it was a soft call right there. But it's not, that wasn't notable because, something big happened after it or things like that. But there was one where Gardner hit on Warner with about 6 minutes left to go in the second quarter, right? A little bit of the drive before this, where you could see Warner was starting to feel the shots. And then after this roughing the passer call, you just saw EJ Warner. One, he came out of the game, right? He came out for a couple of plays. But the crazy thing is you just saw a man get defeated right there. Like you couldn't see it just, you saw the life get sucked out of EJ Warner's life. His face looked different. From that moment on, that game was over. EJ Warner was not going to lead them. I'm not saying he gave up in a bad way. I don't think his body could continue to take it, and you had broken him mentally late in the second quarter, that it just kind of, that play just kind of felt like he laid on the turf for a little bit. Obviously he came out, so he was hurt a little bit, but you could just see him just laying face down in the turf, just like, what the hell is happening here? So those are my three. Sam, what do you have?
Good three. I feel like that's almost a tough act to follow here. So going to start with, probably not surprisingly, the defense for my first play. This was from Rice's first possession of the game. The Owls had a 3rd and manageable. It was 3rd and 5 to be exact. Kentrell Webb makes a nearly perfect one-on-one open field tackle of the Owls tight end, Bowden Green, and forced Rice to punt. To me, that was a momentum shifting play early on in this game. The Cougar offense had just gone 3 and out in not very inspiring fashion on the first drive of the game. And I think it was incredibly important at that point that the Cougar defense didn't allow Rice any momentum, and did so with good tackling and a defensive player being in the right spot. Not something we said a lot about the last 2 years. Not to make everything a referendum in the last 2 years, but you only compare yourself to what your program did recently. And it was an uncharacteristic play, and I mean that in the best way possible compared to what we'd seen in prior seasons. Again, not saying the game is a Rice win if their receiver finds a way to get the first down there. I think we saw some pretty noticeable differences between what these teams had physically, but it was an early tone setter, and I think one of those plays that told you, if you were a Rice fan in attendance or watching, kind of what they were going to be in for on Saturday night. Going to stick with the defense for my second play. This one came in the second quarter. I was opening a drive. Rice's Dean Connors took a handoff and was met pretty quickly around the line of scrimmage by Hershey McLaurin, a play that I think was called a somewhat generous 1-yard gain in real time by Connors. I picked this play because it might seem mundane, and you could probably find a number of other similar plays by the Cougar defense in this one. But for me, the fact that the 2024 version of this defense does something like this so often that it's routine to us as people are trying to analyze and talk about the game afterwards, just tells you how far the unit's come in 3 games. You couldn't go back and find a ton of times in the last 2 seasons where a Cougar defender, much less one playing a position that's at least a hybrid defensive back position like McLaurin, made a play like that in run support in that situation. And going to give the Cougar offense some love for my third and final play. I picked a 3rd and long play from the third quarter that the offense converted, where Donovan Smith completed a pass to Devin Williams for 18 yards in the first. The play works because I think Smith was patient enough and importantly was given a decent pocket to work out of by his offensive line, though he moved the pocket with his feet, found Williams, who had a decent amount of space in front of him to work, and got the first down yards and then some. Was a well-designed play, even better execution, and I think it's a play that will get someone overlooked because it was on a drive where it was the drive where Rice stuffed the Cougs inside their own 10-yard line on 4th and 1. But I still wanted to highlight that specific play because it's a great example of, I think, OC Kevin Barbay and the offensive staff continuing to learn what's working in the passing game, and the various players in this offense starting to execute that plan better and better every week. Is it a perfect offense? Is it an offense that is coming off an A+ performance? Don't think so, but it was a nice example of how different this offense could look after 2 weeks. And that's not just solely level of opponent you face. So those are my 3 plays, Bobby. We're going to start with the offense because I think this was certainly the most positive we were feeling about that unit after the conclusion of the game this year. Like I just said a minute ago, not that there weren't things that the offense needs to improve upon or this was a perfect A+ performance, but I think what's making me so positive is the progression we're seeing from week 1 through this past week's game. Bobby, what did you like and what did you not like about what the Cougar offense did against Rice on Saturday?
Yeah, so overall, good performance by the offense, I thought. To your point, not something that's going to make me go, oh my God, this offense is now, Oregon from, what was it, like 2010, 2011 era?
D'Anthony Thomas era Oregon. Brings you back.
Yeah, it's not going to be that. But I want to point out just the main thing that I'm noticing is this offense is developing. This offense isn't what it was in week 1. It looks different. And it's getting better, in my opinion. This offense is looking better and better each week. They're adding new wrinkles. You're seeing different formations. You're seeing different motions. You're seeing it just look a little bit better and just gelling a little bit better. And look, no one in the Cougar world was harder on the O-line week one than probably I was. So let me give a little bit of shine to them right here. They had a really good game. A game where Donovan Smith had time to throw. There were a couple of passes where Donovan Smith rolled out. I think it's great scheming. They said our coaching staff said they need to put the players in a better position to win. And while a lot of times that is coach speak, where they just say that to be like, oh yeah, it's my fault. These guys didn't do anything wrong. It's on me. It's on the coaches, things like that. One of the things that I'm noticing though is they actually have changed things up and put their players in a better position to win. Which is nice, and it's very good to see. So, going back and watching the game, Donovan Smith took a couple of sacks, but I'd have to put those on some coverage sacks. They were kind of roll out. Donovan maybe should have thrown the ball a couple of rows deep. Didn't, but just some stuff like that I really kind of noticed, which was nice. The O-line looked really, really, really good to me. Cougs had 237 total yards on the ground. In the preseason pod, in the preview pod, I really said that this team's going to want to run the ball. They're going to want to run the ball a lot. We've seen it from Willie Fritz offenses everywhere he's gone, where he wants to run the ball first. That's the most important thing. And 237 yards is going to get you there. So as we get more into the season, the more this offense is starting to kind of look like what I thought it would. I thought that this offense was going to be a little bit run heavy. It was going to require some good O-line play, and we weren't going to sling the ball around like us Cougar fans are really known for doing. And, it's kind of working out that way. And the offense, again, looked really good this week. So big runs with a ton of speed on the outside is kind of what this offense, what I thought it would look like. Run the ball down people's throats, but then be able to take the top off with some speed and getting the ball into playmakers' hands. And that's exactly what this offense is doing now. So really, really excited to continue to see this offense. Some things that I didn't like, there were some dumb penalties. One of Coach Fritz's things is Cougars don't beat Cougars, and there were a couple of times
he was hot at Jake Wiley after that unsportsmanlike right tackle.
Yes, absolutely. So Cougars don't beat Cougars. That was a big moment there, but luckily none of the penalties really seemed to affect the Cougs and really kill any drives or do anything like that. So what'd you think, bud?
I think you and I have the same favorite big picture thing from this one, that the general philosophy of this offense is to be run first, but I think this week we saw a game plan tailored to the opponent, a game plan that was a lot run heavier than you showed against OU, because what I expect this offense will do, against the better Big 12 defense in the schedule is not do something exactly like we saw. Like went into this game, as the favorite, not enough probably points wise favorite as the Cougar fans want to, but you went into this one, I think the staff knew, with more talent, with better Jimmies and Joes, even with having such a different roster than you did a year ago. It wasn't always perfect or pretty. The offense definitely left 6 to 10 points in the field from those two different drives that ended deep in Rice territory without a score, the failed convert on 4th and short, and a missed field, just a botched field goal generally, bad hold, and nothing working there on a Joseph Kim field goal attempt, though. Not at least on that play, fault of Joseph Kim. I mean, you go week on week. The run game, obviously, I think that's going to get the headlines in this one. Week one, nothing offensively was working, and the staff admitted afterwards they went away from giving the running backs the ball way too quickly in that one. Week two, the offense never went away from the run, wasn't ever really effective, even if I think there were perfectly valid reasons to not go away from showing OU that you were going to run. And then this past week, week three, granted against a lower level defense than your first two opponents, you saw an offense that was able to do what it needed to do in the run game, which isn't something we necessarily saw under the last staff, even against opponents that you thought you could bully, thought you could outmatch. You played a lot of American Conference teams where you were out-talenting them, but we still even then didn't really see a consistent running game over the previous 5 seasons of the previous head coach. I think you've said it to me a couple different times, including on our last Premium Instant React pod after the Rice game. This running game is better when Donovan Smith is involved. He shouldn't be the guy getting way more carries than your backs necessarily. He's not the most explosive runner, but that game was a demonstration of how much his ability to be a good between the tackles runner, who's a hard guy to bring down, is a big, big asset. Also, keeping an interested eye for the remainder of the season on one of your true freshmen, Jamarian Burnett, was one of the top recruits and a late coup by the staff in the 2024 signing class. Got 8 carries for 38 rushing yards in this one. Also got some meaningful snaps the week before at Oklahoma. I thought that was pretty cool. Before Saturday's game, Bobby, I did a written Q&A for our friend Matt from At the Roos website. I like doing written stuff every now and then. One of his questions to me was, it's a pretty simple one, was the one thing that U of H had to do for me to feel comfortable they'd win the game? And my answer was basically, don't hang the defense out to dry like the offense largely did week 1 against UNLV. This offense isn't at the stage yet where I think you could fairly expect them to score nearly all their possessions against anything but probably like the dregs of FBS or like an FCS opponent. I just didn't want to see this offense give the ball away in bad spots, which check, 0 turnovers of any kind on Saturday, avoiding lots of quick empty possessions. I think that was maybe the most important thing. And big check on that one. You only had 2 3-and-outs this entire game. And to that end, you also had 6 different offensive possessions go for at least 3 minutes, which I think was hugely important. Any week, not turning the ball over and bleeding lots of clock can be a winning formula. But you'll have to do a lot more offensively for, I think, the majority of the opponents in Big 12 play. But for this game, it was a game plan tailored to this opponent that worked really well. And that's not me knocking the game plan at all. Like, I am just so happy to see a staff that actually tailors a game plan to the opponent, not just, oh, this is what we do, and we're going to do it whether it works or not. And sometimes you're going to question your own sanity trying to figure out what it is we do. This is the exact kind of game and opponent to run the ball 42 times, to bleed clock against, even though I think bleeding clock's probably going to be a winning strategy for this team with the defense being as strong as it is for probably the duration of the season. You game plan to the opponent. And I wanted to see progress. And this team showing an ability against an inferior opponent to play complementary football. And we definitely saw that. I think if you didn't watch this game, you'd probably have the wrong idea of how effective the pass blocking was. Fully agree with you. I think at least 2 of Donovan Smith's sacks were coverage sacks. There's always one stat that kind of surprises me for when I watch the game versus when I look at the box score at some point afterwards. And Donovan Smith getting sacked 3 times and EJ Warner only getting sacked once, Bobby, was one of those where I was like, wait. Yeah. And I think back, I was like, oh yeah, like this play. That was definitely a surprising stat. And I'm not saying every pass play featured 100% perfect pass blocking every time, but you saw noticeably better pass blocking than the absolute disaster that was week 1. And I think a continuation of the good things, the offensive flashes we saw in week 2 in terms of keeping Donovan Smith upright and allowing him the needed time to make things happen whenever the Cougars did decide to pass. Is this offense perfect? No way. And if someone were to still ask me which side of the ball, and more specifically, which position group on this Cougar team is the biggest question, would still say the offense, and would still say for the position group, the offensive line. And I wouldn't have to think too hard about my answer, but there's progress just from the fact that these 5 guys now have 3 full games mostly playing together, other than the practices in the offseason. Tank Jenkins was the only guy who had gotten a significant number of starts before the season. So you have guys who have now played snaps together, and you're going to see growth there. Kind of a random observation, and I don't think any of the attempts to do this in the game were successful, but I really liked that they took some shots downfield in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Because those instances, you had at least a 3-score lead, I think, at most of those points, so it was inherently less risky than trying that kind of thing with a narrow lead and maybe wasting a precious down on a lower percentage pass play. But you don't really have don't have an FCS opponent on the schedule, and frankly, you didn't even get a friendly bounce for Big 12 scheduling as well. You got, I think, by anyone who ranks these things, one of the 4 or 5 hardest schedules in the conference. So no better time to try some stuff in a lower stakes situation and see if you can't keep building Smith's confidence as a passer by connecting on a big, higher degree of difficulty play. I mean, it didn't happen, but when I was watching and rewatching, that was something that caught my eye and I kind of took note of. I think Joan Wilson was the target of at least one of those attempts, and he's such an exciting talent. They haven't really been able to get him involved in the pass game like that as well. You ready to talk about the defense, bud?
Let's do it.
Another week, another unbelievable defensive performance. Can I read you, before I throw it to you, can I read you Rice's drive chart quickly?
Yeah, do it.
Punt, 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 interception, punt, touchdown.
That'll do, Sam.
That's crazy. That's crazy no matter who.
It's even crazier because there's not like a turnover on downs or something like that. It was literally you punt it or you give us the ball on one interception and then garbage time touchdown. Like, that's insane.
7 3-and-outs and 1 turnover for the Cougs. So that's 8 drives where they didn't achieve a first down of any kind, and an interception that put the offense at just about the closest spot you could be in. What did you like the most? I'm not even going to put the preface of what did you not like. There was literally nothing to see that I think you could be negative about. So what were the specific things that you liked from this? Another really exciting Cougar defensive performance.
Yeah, I mean, what's there to say, right? This defense is good, and it's not just good for what we thought it was going to be. It's good for a D1 program. It's good for an FBS program. Man, as I was watching the game, rewatching it, trying to find my plays, how good is McCutcheon? McCutcheon is so good.
We've heard preseason hype before, but oh man, like he might even be exceeding that preseason hype.
And the impact he had on this game was massive, and he didn't play the second half. Like, if you were naming players of the game, McCutcheon would be like on a short list of it, and he didn't play the second half. Like, that's insane.
Led you in solo tackles and didn't even play the final 2 quarters.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And you pointed this out last week. But watching DBs separate wide receivers from the ball it's so exciting. Like, you know, when a receiver gets his hand on the ball, he's probably getting hit by a Houston Cougar, and there's a chance he's not completing the catch. And that's really, really, really exciting. It's not something that I have felt in a while. You know, the one sack that we talked about earlier, really misleading. Such a misleading sack because this defense hit EJ Warner every single time he dropped back to throw. They broke him. It was just amazing. This Rice team, if you gave them a perfect scenario of how they're going to win games, they're going to run the ball on you. And they only had 75 yards rushing against the Cougs. Like, if you would have told me that Rice averaged 3 yards per carry and they had 75 yards, I would have taken it every single time, every single offer. Because if you would have told me that, I would have said, bet the under and the Cougs are going to win by 50. And the Cougs dominated a game where they might have been able to win by more than they did. This defense is so impressive, and it's been a long time since I've really seen an opposing quarterback just get broken, have their spirit broken. It's been a long time since we've seen that out of a Houston Cougar defense, and it's really nice to see. So what'd you see, bud?
Can I give you a not totally complete list of my favorite defensive stats from this game?
Yes, please.
We were just talking about, EJ Warner, career low 50 passing yards, and the crazier stat, 2.4 yards per pass attempt. That'll work. The Owl offense didn't break 100 yards until late in the fourth quarter on their final possession, where they scored a very garbage time touchdown. That last possession was 12 plays and went for 70 yards. Prior to that drive, for the entire game, they had run 39 plays for a grand total of 89 yards. For those of you like me out there who aren't mathematically gifted enough to do that in your head, prior to that garbage time touchdown drive at the end, Rice was averaging 2.3 yards per play. And that's a silly number. Even if you don't think this was a good opponent, and I don't think this was that good of an opponent, that's a silly number. That's beyond reasonable expectation of what a good defense should do to a bad offense. This Cougar defense forced a 3-and-out or a turnover, like I said earlier, 8 different times on Saturday night. The Owls only had 2 possessions, one of those being that last touchdown drive that lasted longer than 3 minutes this entire game. And QB hurries can be kind of a hard stat to predict. I feel like they're almost kind of dependent on the home team or whoever is the official score or whatever the football equivalent is for the game. But I think nobody who watched this game, whether they be Cougar fan, Owl fan, or neutral party, would be surprised that the Cougar defense managed 6 quarterback hurries of mostly EJ Warner on Saturday night. I've said it before. I like doing the instant react and our regular pod episodes a few days later because with a few days of marinating in the brain, we think about different things in the immediate aftermath versus a few days later when you have some more time to think about it. And the most impressive thing for me now with a few days to marinate is something we've already talked about, that Latrell McCutcheon, the guy who was a revelation to the Fritz staff, apparently was turning heads into the Holgorsen staff as well, was ejected on, we'll say, a questionable targeting penalty after a Cougar punt late in the second quarter. And to that point, he had been all over the place, still on the team with 4 solo tackles and forced a fumble. I'll ask you, did you notice from watching or rewatching any drop-off from the Cougar defense after McCutcheon had to leave the game?
No, honestly, I didn't.
I didn't either. And the numbers don't show any kind of drop-off over, from that period at the end of the second quarter through garbage time. As much as I didn't like the call one bit, I'm grateful if it had to happen, we got to see that this defense isn't one Latrell McCutcheon away from completely no longer being functional, and that we'll be getting him back at the start of this coming Saturday's game against Cincy. I spent a lot of last week's pod, I think, giving Keith Cooper Jr. his flowers off of a great performance against Oklahoma, and he did good stuff in this one too, but this week I'm going to highlight a couple of different defensive linemen, Carlos Allen and Anthony Holmes Jr. Allen had that one deceptive sack. Not that the sack itself was deceptive, but you know what I mean? Had the one official sack for the record books. Really did a really good job on that one, crashed in the pocket. It's been cool to kind of see him step into that role of slightly shorter than average interior defensive lineman who can crash the pocket sometimes. That was vacated by Josie Owankwo when he transferred to Colorado. Really liked what I've seen from Allen all season so far, and I'm comfortable saying that this was a guy who was clearly evaluated correctly, was clearly ready to make the jump from the FCS level to playing for a Big 12 program. And Holmes got credit for 3 of those 6 quarterback hurries I mentioned earlier. And from watching the game a couple different times now, that checks out to me. Love seeing some of these holdover guys like Holmes step into bigger roles and thrive in the new scheme. And it's not just about Holmes, but you also, it's cool to see guys like Jamal Morris, AJ Halsey at safety, Juwan Gatson, who's been splitting reps at the anchor position with Hershey McLaurin. It's crazy. Guys are actually improving and developing. Did you know this was possible?
I didn't, man. It's pretty wild to see.
All right. Do you have any other defensive thoughts?
No, man, I'm good.
Quick before we put this game to bed, I just wanted to say how satisfying it is for me, and I imagine you as well, that order is restored in this series. I mean, Rice winning last year did give this game more juice, did give this game more pregame intrigue than it had in any of the previous recent matchups. And the most important thing to me was simply to see the Cougars get the win. I wasn't going to nitpick a win. Expectations in the fan base, I think, are pretty grounded and realistic, but losing at home to Rice would have put kind of a black cloud over this season. Having this be the first time in over 20 years that you've lost 2 straight in the series to Rice would have put a black cloud, would have put some doubt over the season. Not that anyone in this country is on a colder seat than Willie Fritz, but you want fan buy-in, and winning this game and winning it in blowout fashion, I think signaled to this fan base, especially compared to last year's result in this game, that the right people are now running Cougar football. And now you just got to go back out and win this game at Rice next year, then tell Rice, if you want a chance to get the bucket back from Big Brother, you're going to play a 2-for-1 arrangement from here on out. That's how I feel about this.
There you go.
All right, up next, the Cougars will go on the road to the Queen City, beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio, to take on a familiar face in the Cincinnati Bearcats to open up Big 12 play for the 24 season. The Bearcats are 2-1 in this young season, most recently doing kind of a parallel of the Cougs Week 3 win. They beat their in-state private school rival, who they've historically dominated but lost to last year, by retaking the victory bell from Miami, Ohio in a 27-16 road win. Bobby, now that you've got a chance to look at them a little bit, what stands out to you most about this Cincy team in the current season?
Yeah, kind of checking them out on SP Plus and watching some highlights of games. The big thing is their offense is actually better than their defense through most metrics that you would see. Coming in at 2-1, like you said, wins versus Townsend, Miami of Ohio, close loss to Pitt, where they were actually up pretty big in that game and ended up losing on a last-second-ish field goal to a Pitt team. So interesting there. Lost to them by 1. Quarterback Brandon Soulsby transferred from Indiana to be a Bearcat. Went from being a Hoosier to a Bearcat. Actually played a good amount in Indiana, considering, I saw sophomore and I was like, oh, he probably transferred and this is his first. No, he played quite a bit for Indiana last year.
It's from your neck of the woods. Sorry, not to cut in.
Yeah, from Denton. Yeah, last year 15 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, and this year has a 6-0 touchdown to interception ratio, which is pretty good. 2 touchdowns a game on average doesn't exactly excite you, make you, it doesn't pop off the page, but 0 interceptions is always good. Protects the ball well. Not a major running threat, but kind of what I picture a lot of quarterbacks now do is good enough to escape pressure and pick up a few yards here and there. He's been sacked 5 times this season, 0 of those coming against Townsend. So gonna be interesting to see how the Cougars handle that as well. If we can continue keeping up that pressure that we have against Rice and against Oklahoma, even if we can get the defensive line play like that, there's a chance that you can get him with some happy feet and really affect their passing game this weekend. And then just kind of exploring the Cincy sphere of influence, I guess you could call it. We move over to their defense, which they are not very happy with right now. There was a conversion to a 3-3-5, and it just doesn't seem to be working for Cincy and their fan base right now. They only have 8 sacks on the year. 3 came against Townsend, so you got 5 amongst the other 2. So you got 3 in one, and I think 3 in one and 2 in the other. But the Cougar offense, our run games looked really good. Can the Cougar offense in that run game slash up a not slow, but a smaller defensive front, a 6-man defensive front? Can the Cougars capitalize on that? And can the Cougs protect Donovan Smith? Donovan Smith has looked solid, I'd say, when he has protection. And since he's not getting to the quarterback, there's a good chance that they're going to get a good amount of protection, and we might be able to see Donovan do some stuff, especially if the Cougs can open up the run game a little bit and make them cheat, make those defensive backs cheat and look into the backfield to see if the run's coming, and then you kind of take it off the top. So I expect the Cougs to offensively really come out and dominate up front. I think that's what they really need to do in order to win this game.
You're a little more optimistic than me. Not that I think Cincy has this great defense. I mean, Miami, Ohio threw for over 300 yards. Pitt threw nearly 300 yards and had well over 500 total for the game. So definitely not to the level defensively that they were under their previous head coach, Luke Fickell. And from what I've been able to take the temperature in the Cincinnati fan base, it does seem like defense is a thing they're less satisfied with. I'm comfortable saying that Cincy will be a better team than they were last year. It's a little bar to clear, but I think they clear it. And a big reason is probably the first guy you talked about, Brendan Sorsby, was, I think, one of such that Indiana had any bright spots last year. I think it was Sorsby's redshirt freshman season, accounted for almost 20 touchdowns as a part-time starter, was more effective on the ground, calling his own number there than he's been so far at Cincy, though he does have a couple rushing touchdowns. For any warts this Cincy team has, for any questions about Scott Satterfield as a hire and a guy to build something long-term there, I think they have a good guy at quarterback to build around. And in terms of identity, to me, it seems like they want to be run first, though Sorsby did throw for 100 or 200 yards against Pitt in week 2. If I had to pick an MVP for this offense, a guy to watch, a guy whose performance this one's going to be very important, it's their veteran running back, Corey Kiner, local kid who started his career at LSU, played a bunch there as a true freshman, played at Cincy the last season Fickell was there and has stuck around to the current staff, rushed for over 100 yards in each of the last 2 games, probably would have rushed for more in week 1 against Towson, but understandably didn't burn him on a game against an FCS team that they were never in doubt to beat. Also have a couple of first-year transfer running backs, Evan Pryor, who comes in from Ohio State, and Chance Williams from Grambling. Like I said a moment ago, they haven't been really successful so far incorporating Sorsby in the QB run game. The Cougars have gotten, I think, a couple pretty good tests of mobile quarterbacks with Matthew Sluka in week 1 and Jackson Arnold in week 2 of Oklahoma. The matchup I'm most interested in when the Cougar defense is on the field is Xavier Henderson against Latrell McCutcheon in the Cougar defensive backs. Henderson was an honorable mention All Big 12 guy last year. big target guy who started his career at Florida and right now has double as many catches as any other UC player. Really excited to see a Henderson versus Latrell McCutcheon matchup as someone who just loves watching good one-on-ones. Henderson, I think, will get his every so often. The goal is to not let him take over the game, not let him have the big impact plays that could change what I think will be a close football game. I think the Cincy defense, that's going to be an interesting test because they're better than the team we just saw the Cougs face, the Rice defense. And they're good enough defensively that if we see something similar this week to what we saw last week, it would be a real genuine sign that the staff is continuing to figure things out on that side of the ball, but also not so good that it's laughably unrealistic. Like, as much as I, at the start of this, said I don't know if I'm ready to say the Cougars going to dominate up front, their defense hasn't been so good that it's unrealistic to say, hey, the Cougar offense is going to get shut out. They're good at rushing the passer. They've had a number of sacks this year, and certainly keeping Donovan Smith upright hasn't been this offensive line strength, but that run defense has been kind of hit or miss. It was outstanding last Saturday against Miami, Ohio. They allowed the Red Hawks barely over 1 yard per carry, but against Towson and Pitt in the prior 2 weeks, they allowed a hair under 200 yards on at least 5 yards per carry to each of those opponents. We know this Cougar offense wants to feature the run. Do we see them build on what they did last week against Rice? And for whatever things that have made the defensive front hit or miss at stopping the run, they've been good at rushing the passer and creating havoc behind the line of scrimmage. Can this offensive line have its best performance of the season? In terms of the defense, some other individuals I want to highlight as well. True freshman Simeon Coleman, a linebacker, had a really strong start to their season, 10 total tackles, and was one of PFF's highest graded freshmen in week 3. Jared Bartlett, a West Virginia super senior who's in his first year with the Bearcats, played with Hershey McLaurin there last year. Leads are as tied for the team lead for the Bearcats in a bunch of categories: solo tackles, total tackles, and tackles for loss. And another super senior transfer, Derek Canteen from Va Tech, is tied with Bartlett for the team lead in solo tackles. They have a lot of new faces from the portal on this defense, but they haven't sacrificed age. They still have a veteran team, which I think is important. And certainly when you're having a lot of turnover from the last staff and their roster, this one, I think it's important you get veteran guys in there. Any last thoughts about the Bearcats, Bobby?
No, sir.
I'll just say I feel better about this one than I would have expected before the season started, certainly than when I looked ahead at the schedule after the week 1 loss to UNLV. But I don't know, Cincy's one of those teams that no matter what the game looks like on paper, given the last 7 or 8 years, I'll believe the Cougs win it when I see it. That's no kind of knock on the Fritz staff. I think it's kind of a sports trauma response from last year's game. Much as we had doubts on the Holgerson staff, we looked at last year's game at home and thought, okay, well, we can at least beat these guys, right? And I think in a season full of dispiriting losses, don't know if there was one more dispiriting than losing at home to Cincy, and that one never really being close. And this could be a challenging game from a preparation standpoint. These guys are coming off of their first ever win, coming off an emotional game the week prior. I'm not saying they're overlooking the first Big 12 game, but now you're flying to the other side of the country and playing an 11 a.m. kickoff that the betting market thinks is a coin flip. This team has the road experience from playing at OU week 1, but it's different to get for a night game where you can play loose because nobody outside of your building is expecting you to win, as compared to an entirely different scenario here. Not that Nippert Stadium isn't a good atmosphere as well, but it's an entirely different level of expectation for you versus the Oklahoma game. I'm not giving up all hope if it's a loss. I personally just want to see a competitive game against this opponent because we haven't seen this program do that against the Bearcats in a good long while. And some of that you could say that was Luke Fickell having that program at an incredibly high level, one of the best in the country, certainly the best G5 at the time program. Now this needs to be a competitive game. If you get blown out for the second time in a row to these guys, yeah, I think you need to burn some sage or something around Cullen Boulevard. But I think that's it for the Bearcats. We are continuing our week-on-week predictions thing down with the Pickness. After week 3, Bobby still holds the lead on yours truly with just over 1,063 pod bucks to my 992. Bobby went 1-0 last week, taking the under, oppo of me smartly, 44.5 points with 50 pod bucks, whereas I went 1-1, correctly predicting the Cougs would cover the 4.5 point spread with 50 pod bucks, but incorrectly taking the over. Bobby, ready to hear my picks?
Hit me, buddy.
I have the Cougars money line plus 145. I'm going a little bit oppo. I know I said I would continue doing the overs as a bit, but I'm going to flip this. I'm taking the first half under of 20 and a half points, which is plus 135. Don't know if I said money line is plus 145, doing 50 bucks for the money line for someone who just got done saying that he would believe the Cougars would win when he saw it. I think there's good value there. I think this could be a better team, and I'm taking the first half under with a little more modest 35 bet. What are your picks for this week, pal? Or pick?
Yep. So give me the Cougar money line at 65 pod bucks. And then I'm going to take the Cougars since I'm taking a money line. Obviously, I think they're going to cover. They're getting 4.5. So obviously, I'm going to take that as well. So let me do 35 pod bucks on the Cougars plus 4.5.
Like it.
So yeah, I got the Cougs plus 4.5. I think the Cougs. I don't know why I have faith. I think you're right. It is more of the value in that. Plus 145 is kind of tough to pass up when you think this game's going to be pretty close. If it was plus 120, plus 125, I don't know if I take it, but 145 feels like I should be taking that money. And then if you're going to take them money line, you got to take them with the plus 4.5, because if they win money line, then you're doubling up your winnings here. So that is probably a terrible gambler's fallacy that I am playing with there, but I am going with it.
Hey, if it's not real money, feel free to keep doing the various gambler fallacies. Should have teased this one at the top. We were leaving the subject of football, but a very big Cougar news. Waited a little bit for the first commitment, but man, it did not disappoint for the Cougar men's basketball class of 2025 as Isiah Harwell, a 6'6", consensus 5-star shooting guard originally from Pocatello, Ohio, announced last Thursday that he would be committing to Cougar men's basketball. Harwell is an enormous first domino. That might be underselling it. Talking about recruiting before guys are officially signed on campus isn't something we always do here, but when a recruit the pedigree of Isiah Harwell does, it is big appointment news. Bobby, what do you like about what you've read about the newest addition to Kelvin Sampson's program?
Everything I've read says that he's a perfect Kelvin Sampson kind of guy, except he has a ton of talent, right? He's going to come in and work hard. Everyone talks about that. It was kind of cool at his commitment. He had a bunch of his teammates there, and you could tell that meant a lot to him as well. So if there's one thing about Kelvin Sampson is the team comes first, and it certainly appears that that team goes first with him.
From what I've read, a big part of how U of H had such good standing with him and had the proverbial inside track for his commitment for a while now was that the staff still made recruiting him an extremely high priority after he suffered an ACL injury about a year ago, thus missed a lot of basketball, both the high school and AAU grassroots kind in that time. It's almost a given that this is the case for someone who is joining this program, but everything I've read is that he's a true two-way guy, physical defender. We know also this U of H program really prefers to switch defenders 1 through 4. Harwell has both the size and tools, it seems like, to come in here and do that immediately. That kind of reminded me of what we heard about Jarris Walker before he got on campus. Yeah. Jarris, I believe, even though he was a very versatile guy, a guy who could do a whole lot more than you would expect a 6'8" guy built like a Mack truck, as I believe I called him a few different times in this show, to do. Harwell, a bit more, wing perimeter guy, I think naturally, but could still do the switching 1 through 4 and not losing anything, regardless of which specific position of opposing player that he's going against on the defensive end. In his comments about the commitment, since the commitment, Harwell talked about coming to U of H. It would help him improve as an all-around player. You kind of take it as a given that U of H wouldn't get this far down the road with a recruit who doesn't fit this culture. But everything he said publicly, everything that's been said about him from a UH perspective gives me confidence as a kid who understands why he wants to join this specific program and what he thinks he's going to be getting out of this program. From his career, also a shout out to assistant Casey Beard, an Idaho native who, from my understanding, it sounds like played a pretty big role in getting the Idaho native Harwell to commit to the program. Still some interesting dominoes to fall in that 2025 recruiting class for U of H. You have 5-star point guard Kingston Flemings from San Antonio, universally regarded as either the best or second best player in Texas. He's still strongly considering the Cougs. New Orleans big man Chris Sinek was on campus for an official visit during the week 1 football game. One of the very few recruits out there who's rated higher than Harwell, Koa Pete, a power forward from Gilbert, Arizona, is also strongly considering the Cougs. I've been seeing more recently another blue chip big man, center John Clark from the Link Academy, which is one of the big prep schools out there, is also considering the Cougs. Probably not going to land all of those guys, but just getting a couple out of that group I mentioned would be a statement of a recruiting class from a program that is already one of the true elite in the sport, which is something I pinch myself every time I say that out loud.
Insane.
Yeah. Like I could just remember far back enough when it was us joking about how many asses were in seats at Hofheinz Pavilion.
Yep.
And
it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're talking about our second 5-star in 3 years, and there's 2 to 3 of them that could absolutely be joining in the same classes as this other guy. So if we've covered that enough, Bobby, let's get into Cougar volleyball, which I think, not unsurprisingly, had a tough week against an extremely tough schedule. Right after we last recorded, the Cougs lost 3-0 in Austin to the number 6 Longhorns. None of the 3 sets that you lost that one were blowouts, but by the same token, I don't think any of them were close enough that when I was following along in real time that I got my hopes up that the Cougs were going to really take a set in Austin. Maybe the only disappointing thing about this match for me, and I don't know if disappointing is even the right word for it, but the Longhorns cooled down a bit after hitting absurdly well in their first 2 sets. The Cougs had 10 attack errors in the last after combining for 8 in the first 2. Weren't able to take advantage of the Longhorns cooling down, which is kind of frustrating, but you saw one team in this one with a lot of new faces trying to gel and another being the top 10 defending national champs who have a number of key players like Madison Skinner and Jenna Wenis still playing for them for the national championship team. This is something you could say about a few different matchups from this past week, but I still think these games are more valuable than the empty calorie non-conference wins, but ultimately only valuable if you learn something from it. So unless you have any insights that you would like to add on that one, Bobby, why don't you tell me about what you saw this past weekend in Dallas? Were you there in person for 100% of the Cougar volleyball that was played at SMU this past weekend, though unfortunately 2 losses to 2 different top 25 programs?
I do have to admit it wasn't fully 100%. I did leave the last set of the SMU game with 1 point left to go in the game. So not
around
100%.
Up 98 to 99%.
I was there for like 99%. Yeah. The biggest thing was that first match versus Purdue. You could just see a difference in size, athleticism, and that first set, Cougs lose 25-12, go 25-21, 25-20. Played them kind of close. They kind of settled in a little bit. But man, that first set, you look at it, Purdue has a .37 hitting percentage versus the Cougs .026. That's not good. You're not going to win any sets doing that. Purdue had a couple of players that were just ridiculous volleyball players. You just kind of watch them and you were just like, oh no, that's different. Just a shout out to Chloe Chicoine for Purdue. I think I texted you that she was the best volleyball player I've ever seen in my life, because there was nothing she couldn't do. And you go, yeah, she was. She's a sophomore, and she was a third team All-American and unanimous Big Ten All-Freshman team, and first team All Big Ten as a freshman.
Was the number 1 volleyball recruit in the country in the 22 class as well?
She was ridiculous.
23 class, excuse me.
Yeah, was a ton of fun to watch. But you kind of look at her numbers. She had the most kills. Another player, Eva Hudson, for them, really good as well. So you just saw a different level of talent there. You could see a U of H. You could see a U of H team that lost some of their best players. Kellen Morin's out. So, not that I think we'd beat Purdue if that were if she were there, but I think it does look a little bit different. Maybe it's a little bit closer. So that was Friday. Saturday, Cougs go to a really good SMU team. They're receiving votes. They
just
be
beat Baylor not that long ago, who was
now.
also a top 25 team. Yeah.
Yeah. And they also, if I recall, I'm looking it up. I meant to look this up. Beat a Stanford team as well. Or no, they beat Nebraska. I'm sorry. They swept Nebraska. So you're not playing some small team that isn't very good. I mean, they did get swept by Kentucky at home, but went on the road, beat Baylor, beat Nebraska at home 3-0. So it was a good team, and the Cougs actually did play them close. The scores 25-12 in the first set. That was ugly. I think the Cougs were negative hitting percentage. Yeah, negative 103 on the hitting percentage there, while SMU was a 0.5% hitting. So when one team's hitting 500 and the other one's hitting negative 100, you're going to lose by a lot. It doesn't matter. 26 kills for SMU with 2 hitting errors, 2 attack errors. It's pretty good. Cougs that first set, 12 kills, 18 attacking errors. You're going to lose every single time. But the Cougs did rally back. Set 2, hit better, beat SMU there. Set 3, surprisingly close, considering. Sorry, these stats don't look right. Sorry, they're throwing me off. Cougs played it close, but SMU hit 485. And the Cougs still did pretty well in that third set. So, and then the fourth set played at 25-22. Cougs actually led most of the fourth set, or it was going back and forth. They didn't, you'd go up one, then they'd side out, and it would just, it was a close, and then SMU just kind of late, just kind of pulled through and beat the Cougs there. So rough weekend, didn't look bad. Still, I think this volleyball team is going to be a tournament team. I don't know if they're going to be a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 type of team, but yeah, that's kind of what I saw this weekend. Really fun just to be there. Surprisingly, if I asked you, besides SMU, the other 3 teams that were there, Kentucky, Purdue, and Houston, who brought the most fans? There were so many Purdue fans there. So many Purdue fans. I'm thinking at least legitimately at least 100, which doesn't sound like a ton, but one for volleyball, if you bring 100 people, you're going to
100 people and you're not like in a neighboring state or in Texas.
Yeah, it was 100, 125 people. It was crazy. I sat down and I was like, "Oh my God, there's so many Purdue fans," and they were loud too. It was impressive to see that Purdue team.
Yeah, still like I said at the top, I think there's value in playing tough games like this versus hosting something at home and getting 3 wins where you don't really learn anything about yourself. Your schedule can't be exclusively you getting your teeth kicked in by the best 20 or so teams in the country, but I think these were 3 valuable games, even if they were 3 losses. So up next, the Cougs will host another midseason multi-team event at the Fertitta Center, the Cougar Challenge, which is a little bit friendlier. You're opening tomorrow night on Thursday against A&M Commerce. Should be an easy win. Lions are 2-7 on the season. Not all those 7 losses they have are against super high quality teams, though. They have played very good TCU and UCLA teams prior to this. But the most important match of the weekend is going to be on Friday night when you host Ole Miss at 7 p.m. Rebels have a 7-2 record to date, though not a strong strength of schedule. To get to 7-2, they have losses to Arkansas State. Shout out to their head coach, former UH assistant Brian Gerwing, and Northern Colorado, also in a true road setting, don't have any notable wins out of the 7 that I alluded to a second ago. They have a pretty balanced offensive attack. 4 players so far this year for the Rebels are averaging at least 2 kills. Sophomore right side Shayla Myers leading them with 3.19 kills per set. They have a UCLA transfer at setter. Mokihana Tufono is averaging over 10 assists per set, and a returning libero, Cami Nielsen, who started every match last year and was 3rd in the SEC in digs per set. An important match that I think the Cougs should win, but one where you absolutely cannot have a repeat of how you played against UALA from the last weekend that the Cougs were at home. Not much to say about the Saturday opponent other than giving them a shout out for at 3-6 already surpassing their 2023 win total, Tennessee State. Not really much to say about that one. This feels kind of like a get right game this weekend, doesn't it? Or get right weekend for this program, doesn't it?
Yeah, Cougs need this weekend. The game against Ole Miss will be big, but this does feel like the weekend where if the Cougs are going to make an extended run, this will be the weekend to start doing it.
Couple quick sports hitters while we're at the door. Probably don't have the time to give them that we had volleyball and the other topics, but Cougar soccer lost 5-0 in their Big 12 opener to UCF, and that day, randomly in the middle of the season, debuted a team crest that I know Bobby is dying to give his opinion on, so have at it, pal.
Look, the crest itself, I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's particularly good, right? I don't think when I see it, I go, oh yeah, that's a really nice logo. I think I told you that it feels like something, and this is no shot at him, that Bill would produce. Our longtime friend and creator of our logo, Bill. That's not a shot at Bill. Bill has the ability to apparently do Division I graphics.
I think I'm going to defend. I think Bill could do 15 to 20% better than that graphic, which isn't bad either. Yeah.
No. But I just, Bill doesn't get paid to do graphic arts. The thing that I don't understand about it, one, I said the thing, there's way more than one thing. Number one, why does soccer need their own crest? Right? You look at every other athletic program. I went through the top 10 teams in women's soccer in the NCAA, and I was like, do they have their own crests? You know how many of them had their own crests, Sam?
I'm going to say one.
Zero. The answer is zero. It's usually the logo, and then it just says soccer underneath. When I went to Oklahoma, when I went to the OU game, you walk into their shop, there's no special logo for any sports. Even when they win a title, the logo is the OU title inside of the national championship emblem that they create for that. But just a random logo, they already have a logo. They already have a shield. It's the U of H logo. That's it. Your logo is the U of H logo. Why are you creating a new logo? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And the second thing is, why are you doing it now, the day of the Big 12 opener? Like, release that at the start of the year. If you're going to release a logo that we're supposed to... No one's paying attention to you right now. You're the first sport to kick off every single year. You kick off the UH Athletics calendar every single year. You could have debuted it there, said, come look at the new debut of our new shield, and look, Cougar sports are back. But you didn't. What did you decide to do? Well, let's put it out before our first Big 12 game. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The logo itself isn't that great. Two, they don't need their own logo. They just don't. I'm sorry. Soccer doesn't need their own logo. And is anybody watching? Did anybody see that logo and go, oh my God, now we're talking about Houston soccer? No. You know what would make me think of U of H soccer first? The U of H logo. The logo that the athletic department paid a lot of money to develop. And I remember because I was a fan when they came up with this new logo. Like, you have to... That's the problem with our athletic department sometimes. Is we try to get too cute and we don't do the basic shit right. Like, just one time I would love for us, I walk into the OU thing and it just says Oklahoma across the top, and then there's a sport underneath it. It's Oklahoma in their font, and then underneath in what kind of look like tape or something like that, it says football, basketball, soccer, W basketball. They're not doing dumb shit like that,
Yeah. It seemed like a who's asking for this kind of scenario. Not an offensively bad logo or anything, but just
right.
Why now? Why is this happening? Not much to say about the game. Certainly not anything positive. I didn't expect at any point last week or looking at the Big 12 schedule that this was one that the Cougs would win, but losing in this fashion is unacceptable, and it doesn't give me much hope that the current season will be appreciably different than the last 2 seasons. That sucks.
Yep.
This week, the Cougs are hosting Arizona State at home on Thursday night. The Sun Devils had pretty strong non-conference record. Not a lot of great opponents in there, though. One notable, they did beat LSU pretty soundly a few weeks ago in Baton Rouge. On Sunday, the Cougs will travel to Waco to take on Baylor. And they had a really impressive early non-conference. They had wins over A&M and SMU. They did have a not-so-great draw at home against a common opponent, Texas State. Drew 2-2 to them. Wish I had more faith the Cougs could get anything from either of these games, though I think both are more winnable than the UCF one.
Yeah, I think, I said UCF was kind of the barometer to it. Not that I thought we'd win, but, if you keep that game close, maybe you feel a little bit of excitement for the season. And just to get blown out like that was just, I don't like to use the word embarrassing very often, but it kind of was. That game was an absolute annihilation. I had it pulled up to watch it, and pretty quickly there was you just saw a lot of sloppy play, a lot of play that just shouldn't be with a Big 12 program. So
all right, we're going to end the pod on a happier note. Our first Cougar tennis news of the current sports season. New Cougar Santa Strombaja was selected to compete in the ITA All-American Championships, which will be in Cary, North Carolina, starting this Saturday and running through the following weekend. If you don't know, it is an event where only the best of the best singles players or doubles pairings get selected. This is also the first time since 2017 that a U of H tennis athlete has participated in the event. Strombaja was also the first Cougar tennis athlete since 2015 to be included in the ITA individual rankings, where she was number 109 nationally in singles. Didn't surprise me that she was selected just based on her body of work. She was incredibly good in her 3 years at Grand Canyon, the last 2 under new head coach and her former Grand Canyon coach, Kat Adamovich. Only lost once in singles last spring, and for her entire Grand Canyon career, only lost 10 singles matches total. And most fall competitions, like fall stuff for a spring sport, is more about shaking the rust off, but this event has actual real stakes. 10 players from this one, the 8 quarterfinalists in the main bracket and the 2 consolation bracket finalists can punch their tickets to the NCAAs next year from this event. So very real stakes. I think the event will be televised through the Cracked Rackets YouTube channel. I'll try to make sure any interested Cougar fans out there can see where to watch this to the pod social media. Good chance for her to potentially, not easy to do it. You gotta win a number of games to get there, but potentially punch your ticket to the singles championship before the spring season even starts, which would be a cool thing to do. And I think just a statement of this program being in a better place, that you have an ITA All-American Championship caliber player on the roster.
yeah, just really cool seeing a Cougar athlete do something that no Cougar athlete has done in a while. So
Yeah, and we'll check back in with them here in the next month or so. There'll be a couple of DFW events that Bobby, if he has time, might be out of. So find a little time to talk Cougar tennis, a team that I think is a very resurgent team and one that we're excited to see in the spring with this new look roster and new look coach. All right, Bobby, that's it for us. You want to take us home?
yes, sir. Well, that's it for this week's pod, everybody. Just some final housekeeping. If you have some feedback for us, or you just want to talk U of H sports, you can find us on Twitter at SH Podcast. You can find just me on Twitter at #1Coug. I don't touch the podcast account very often. I think I've done 2 tweets on it. So if you want to just talk to Dustin because you miss him, and that's more of your jam, podcast at bsky.social. I don't think he's done anything too crazy over there lately. Or you can go talk to him if you want to. He could use all the friends he can get. I'm pretty sure it's just me and Sam. He's probably not listening to the end of this, so because he didn't comment last time, so he's not one of my favorite people who makes it all the way to the end. Anyways, if you hate social media and you only use email, you can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. And if you have heard the last hour of podcasting and you were like, man, those guys are so good, I want to give them some money, you can find us on Patreon. Minimum of $5 to get bonus content like post-game, instant reacts, things like that. Patreon, SH Podcast on Patreon. Minimum $5 you can donate. $5 million if you want to. Trust me, Sam and I will not say no. If anybody wants to buy the main, we will call this the Scott and Holman Podcast, presented by about 95% of things out there. And honestly,
96
after
if
that,
you got 10 million.
And if you have heard all of that and you are still listening for some godforsaken reason, you are one of the best Cougars out there. So thank you very much. And as always,
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!